Hello everyone, my name is Rodak and you're watching Vector Art. In today's video, we will create this word counter using WPF and C Sharp, and this will be perfect for learning fundamental WPF concepts like data binding, the MVVM pattern, custom XML styling, and some neat C Sharp regular expression tricks for accurate counting. So let's dive in this video. And for those who haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe to my channel. It means a lot. It motivates me to create more such videos. So we are going to build this dark theme real-time word counter using WPF and C Sharp. It doesn't just count words, it also gives you the character, sentence, paragraph, and even the estimated reading time for the text input here. So here I will demonstrate a simple text that I have. I'll paste it, and here you can see it has calculated that it has 100 words, 672 characters, 13 sentences, 2 paragraphs, and it will take you approximately 30 seconds to read the whole 13 sentences. So that is the simple app that we are going to develop. So let's get started with the video. So for this I will go ahead and start Visual Studio. Let's click create a new project. Let's select recent project WPF app.net framework, or you can also search it in the search bar provided over here, and click next. Give this project a name. I will name this project as word counter and click on create. So now that the project is loaded, let me change the orientation over here so it is better to understand and view. So the first thing that we need is a data structure that holds our statistics. So in WPF, whenever data needs to be displayed and updated automatically, we use the MVVM pattern, which starts with iNotify property change. So we'll create a simple class called statistic item. And to do that, we'll go to our main window.xaml, and within our main window.xaml we'll create this statistics item simple class. So let me take the code that I already written, and I will paste in, and I'll explain you what we are going to do. So I have this class already written, so let me take that and copy it and paste it within our namespace. So here is my static model class, statistic model class, and let me explain what this will do. So now this class will hold and display the data for each of our 5 titles, that is the characters, sentences, words, and the time that it requires to read the whole text. So that is what it does. So this value will have the all these statistics. Also it has these public properties for labels, and the icon glyphs and the icon color. So you'll soon understand these properties when I add the UI elements that will be bound to these properties. And then you of course have the property changed event handler, and this will trigger the property changed events whenever the value is bound to those labels or icon glyphs or icon colors. So these are static properties that don't change. And here is the example for the labels would be the words that you saw on the UI, or characters or sentences. And for icon glyphs, this will be a hex code for the icons, and this will use the icon glyphs as hex codes. And then you have the icon color, which is the background color for the card or the tile that shows the statistics. So this is what it is. And then next, in our main window class, we will initialize a list of these items. Notice how we use specific colors and MDL2 acid glyphs codes for the icons. This list statistics is what will bind to the UI later. So we will make changes to our main window now and add these logic. So let me go to the code that I have, and I will input some of the details that we need. So first and foremost, I will add the code that will capture the value of the input text. So here in my main window, I have created this property called input text, and these are the getters and setters for the input text. And you also have this on property changed, name of this input text. So this is a text box which is not created yet, so that is why I see this error. But once I add the input elements in the XAML, this will go away. The next, we have this list of type statistic item, and this statistic item is the class that we just created. And it will have we'll have to set some default values. So let's initialize some of the default values. So within our main window constructor, let's add these values. So here you can see we are initializing the list of statistics with the properties that we derive written here over here. One is the label, icon glyph, and icon color. And here you can see the label, we are initializing a new static stick item with the label as word, icon glyph with the value of an icon glyph, and we'll soon explain how to get these values from. And then you have the icon colors, which is a solid color brush, and here I have provided the hex code for the color, which is green, and the icon is a chart icon. And then we have the characters, which has a background of blue, and the respective glyph icon. You can google glyph icons and from Microsoft, and you will find the glyph codes that you can use in this scenarios where you need icons in your application. um, Last thing, next, what we need to do is set the data context, so XAML bindings work against these objects. So after our initialize component, I will just set the data context to this. And also I need a function that will update the counts or initialize the counts. So to do that, I will need a function. So let me introduce the core logic for counting these statistics. So the magic happens inside the this function. Let's call it update counts, and which is called every time the text in our main input box changes. So to do that, we'll add this update counts, and I will explain what this does. But the challenge here is not just counting characters, but accurately counting words, sentences, and paragraphs, which requires handling tricky punctuations and white spaces. So let's add this function, and I will explain you what it does. So let me grab the code, and next is to paste it. So here is my function, which is called update counts. So first is the text itself. So this is the input text field that we need to add in our XAML. This will capture the text and set it into this variable, first thing. And then we need to do the character count. So the character count is pretty simple. This is the easiest. We just take the length of the string after trimming any excess spaces, and then assign it to this variable called character count. Next one is the word count. For accurate word counting, we use regular expression. This expression looks for word characters, which is this slash w, separated by boundaries slash b, and this accurately ignores punctuations and multiple spaces. Next, we have the simple sentences. Similarly, we use a regular expression to find end of sentences, punctuations, periods, question marks, or exclamation points that is immediately followed by a space or the end of the input string. So this covers the sentence counts. So here I have added the regular expression which matches the which checks this text, and you get the sentence count. Next, we have the minimum read time. So we calculate this minimum read time, which is over here, uh, by minimum read time. What I mean is the reading time assuming a standard speed of 200 words per minute. So we use a little conditional logic to display it as seconds if it's under a minute, or minutes otherwise. So here you can see I have assumed that 200 words per minute is the average speed, and the word count divided by the average speed is the minimum read time. And then we display it. If it is less than 1 second, then we display it in seconds. Otherwise it will be in minutes. So that is for the minimum read. And finally, we update the value of this statistics list of 0 to for the first value with word count, second with character count, third with sentence count, and so on. So that is how easy it is to populate this list. Since these items implement the I notify property changed. So here you can see I have added this I notify property change. Since they implement it, the UI will automatically refresh. So next is building the XAML UI itself. So let's switch to the main window.xaml. Before that, I need a few more changes to the code behind. So to do that, let me add the update counts method, or call this after our data context, so that every time we initialize count update. And then next is we need an event handler for our input text box, which we will add, and this input property is updated via the two-way binding. So we need to do that, but first let's go to our code behind, sorry, not the code behind, the UI, and start adding the details. So let's go first start by adding the title, height, width, and the background for our window. So I've done this, and here you can see the word count window looks in a dark theme. And the dark theme, we set this main window background to a darker shade of gray, and use slighter light gray for the panels in the background. So we have this dark gray, and we, for our UI elements to stand out, we will need a lighter gray color for our panel backgrounds. So this gives sets a nice contrast to our elements on the UI. Next, the layout, it will be a simple layout. So a grid with rows, headers, input area, statistics headers, and statistic cards. So let's start by designing them. So let's first start with adding resources. So within before our grid, let's add the resources, and I'll explain you what these resources are. So before our grid, we'll add the resources, and we will bind these resources to our elements on our window. So the first, if it starts with window.resources, and within our resources, the first section is to style the statistic numbers. So the values on our elements will have the font size of 32, font weight of bold, foreground of white, margin of 0, 10, 0, 5, which is left, top, right, and bottom. And then horizontal alignment of value is center. And this style is targeted to the text block. Next, we have the style for the labels. So these labels on top of the counts are the words, characters, sentences, minimum read, and so on. So those will be applied with this style. And the target type is again a text block. Value font size is 14. Foreground is slight shade of gray. Horizontal alignment is center, and font weight is semi bold. Then we have the card icon. So this card icon on the statistics, like word, characters, settings, and so on, they have an icon on the top, which you saw. So for that, we are setting these styles. So the font family is set to MDL to asset, because this font family from Microsoft has these glyph icons. So that is the reason we are using this font. And then we have the font size of 24, that and the width and height would be 30 and 30 points. Then we have the vertical alignment set to center, horizontal alignment to left, because I want the icon to, or the text icon to be placed towards the left. And the padding value is 6. Text alignment is center, foreground is white, and the margin is 15 to the right, sorry, to the left. And then finally, we have the panel header, which will be at the top of the word count, which is basically the title word count. And the key is panel header, and the target type is a text blocks, and the same properties that we are setting. Next, we need a margin of 20 for our grid. So let's add this default a margin. And then within our grid, we need a row definition. So let's add that. So we have 4 rows, as you can see over here. And then we have, let's add a dock panel. And this dock panel will be holding the header, which is called the word count, and it is set. assigned a grid row of 0 and a margin of 10 towards the bottom here. So it has a bottom margin of 10. And then you have the text block within it, which has the foreground of orange color, and the text is in basically a emoji icon. So what I did is, if you can go to the text and press the Windows key and the period key, then you get this emoji pop up where you can select any emoji and it will treat it as a text. So that is how I got this icon over here. And then the next text block is housing the word counter text itself. So this is not having any style applied, but it is applying the text block, the default style that we set over here, and that is the style here. And then next we need to add the border or the input text area over after this word counter, where we will input our text. So let's add that section, and I will explain you step by step what this and how do we use it. So here I have added the border now. So you can see the border is in the grid.row of 1. So it is in the next row now, and the background is a lighter shade of gray than the background darker shade. The corner radius is set to 10. That is why it has a nice rounded corner. It has a padding of 15 and a margin of 20 at the bottom. Then you have a grid within it, and this grid has two rows. And in the first row, within that second grid, we have a dock panel, and within that dock panel we have a stack panel, and that stack panel is housing this button. At the right hand side, we have a delete button and a copy button. So here you have these two buttons, and if you go to these buttons, you have a static resource, and it is set to toolbar dot button style key. And basically this is the trash icon. And then you have the click event handler, which we have not added yet. And we have set the margin, a tooltip called clear text, and also the text block within it. And this text block is basically using the font family MDL2 assets to display this glyph icon over here. So here you can see the glyph icon text automatically interprets it into this icon. So that is why we are using this font family to display these text in the form of icons. So the same thing is done to this next button, which is the copy button. And then we have the text box itself, which is called input text box. And it is set into the grid dot row of 1 here. And it is bound to this input text. So here you can see at the background we have this input text field. It is this is bound to this text box, and the update source trigger is property changed. Then you have accept returns true, text wrapping as wrap, vertical scroll bars visible auto, background and foreground set, border brush set, border thickness is also set. We have a padding and font size. We have a caret brush. We have text change event handlers, and text box resources is set to this target type border. And we are setting a corner radius of 5. So we are setting the styles within the text box resources. So, and that is why we do not have the styles displayed or written in this window. So of course you can write it over here, but the text box resources are written directly within the text box. Then we have a tooltip. So that is all we have for the input. Now let's move to the statistics header, which will come next to this input text. So let's add that. So we have our border. After our border, we add our statistics header, and it is in the grid row 2. And this is the just a header, and it is a simple text blocks. And we apply this panel header that we set over here at the bottom, and it is this style is being applied to that statistics text box. Next, we add the items control, and this will have a data template and an item template, and I will soon explain what this code means. So let me copy this first and paste this data over here. And now you have the items control in this last row, which is the grid dot row of 3. So the statistics card this is where we make the magic happen with the list. Instead of manually creating 5 cards, we have used this items control bound to a statistics list. So we created a statistics list at the back in the code behind, and we are binding that value to this item source, so that we do not create these item controls multiple times, but we are using this item source property and binding to this statistics, and based on the number of statistics elements that we have, it will create that many number of items control. And within that items control, we are also setting a template. And we are also before that, we have the items template. Within the items panel template, we have a uniform grid that lays out the items in a 5 column grid uniformly. Then we have the items template, which defines the one single look for all the statistic items. And then we have the block over here, which will be common for all the statistics. This template, where we will have a border which has a corner radius of 10, and this you will have a rounded square over here. And then you have the stack panel, and this stack panel will have the statistics. The first one is the icon itself, which will be at the corner. Then we have the text block, which is the header like word. uh, and here you can see the border is bound to this icon glyph and the icon color, because we need that icon to have a background color and the icon itself, which is a glyph icon. And then you have the text block, which will have the value, which is the label here, which is word, characters, sentence, paragraphs, and min read. And finally we have the sorry that is the label over here. And the finally the value is bound to this value in this statistic item, which is this value that we set. So that is how simple it is. And then let me go back to the code over here. And now let's save this, and let's now if I run this application, you will see these errors, because you do not have the event handlers taken care in the code behind. So the first event handler that we need to take care of is the input text change text box. So let me add that is the data counting logic that will trigger the update count. So let me go back and add that first. So let me add this, and then this will be triggered. So if I go to the code over here, and let's so here is the input text box, and here is the text change event handler that will call this update counts. Then we need button event handlers. So there are 2 button event handlers that we added. One was here the clear text, and the other one was the copy text. So we need to take care of those as well. So after our update, let's add these 2 event handlers. It is simple enough. So it sets the input text variable or the property on the top to empty, and the input text box focus is set so that it is always focused on this text box. So if you paste or copy anything, it will be copied from there. And then the copy text event handler, which a simple clipboard functionality to take the text inside the input text and copy it and store it in the clipboard. Also, we check if the string is not empty or null. And that is it. Finally, we need the implementation of the property changed event handler on property change. So let's go ahead and add that as well, and save this. And I think we are done. So the item control over here automatically loops through all the statistics list items, and uses the uniform grid over here to arrange them evenly and apply the beautiful dark theme design from the item template to each one of the elements. So let me save this, and all that is left is to run this application and see this in action. So here the application is launched. So here you can see this beautiful looking UI. We have our words, characters, all of the values as 0. You have the glyph icons and their background icon colors, and also the lighter shade of gray for all the items control that we have. So let me paste in some text, and as you can see, it automatically calculates based on the text entered the words, characters, sentences, and paragraphs, and the minimum read time for this input text. You can also delete. So here the text that you have. So let me first copy it and then delete. And then you can see if I go ahead and paste, you have the data copied in the clipboard which I could paste. And there you have it, a fully functional modern word count built entirely with WPF and C Sharp. We covered data modeling with iNotify property changed, effective counting using regular expression, and powerful UI layout using items control. You can use these principles here for any dashboard or statistic panel you need to build in WPF. If you have questions about regular expression, the MVVM binding, or want to know how to add features like syllable count, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more C Sharp and WPF projects. Happy coding, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, bye bye.